to learn the martial arts?
Big surprise. Huge surprise.
I'm starting to get in a bad mood, you know? Maybe it's like a mood swing, my hormones, I don't know. Maybe it's my needs impose my will.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Kickin' It. I'm Rob, your host. I'm transmitting live, of course, from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. And I'm in the underground bunker, transmitting live to somebody who finally decided to share a signal, sir. And I love it when you share your signal with me. And that's, of course, the real RDV. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Doing all right. Just out here in the coronavirusville, yes.
Well, I have to say, there's been a lot of twittering going back and forth here locally in Central Florida because Orange County, where Orlando's located at, it's on like a lockdown now, and it's tweeting. Everybody's tweeting about it, and everything's this and that. So, decided with you to talk about some martial arts movies that are currently on Netflix because Kickin' It is the backbone of one of our more popular channels that we have here on the Xtreme Movie Show on YouTube, closing in on 500 subs. With being around for just about a year, so I'm pretty excited to do this. And I know you looked at some, I looked at some, but the first one that jumps to mind, and it's one of the first newer martial arts films, for me at least, that I recall seeing on Netflix right after we started doing the Chuck Norris movies. And here on Netflix, I'm talking about Amy Johnston's movie, Lady Bloodfight. So, Doctor, you'd seemed, if I recall correctly, you had an idea of who she was, and I had no idea. But it reminded me of a Jean-Claude film earlier on, and I think that's where we were both like, yeah, let's cover it. And it was one of our earlier films that we did. So what do you remember about this film, and why should people who have Netflix put this movie on and watch it?
Well, if you remember the early, I believe it was Bloodsport. This is basically the female version of it, but it's still kick ass now. I mean, that's awesome. It's not, politicalized, all that stuff. It's someone who's going to, to prove their worth, prove, and corruption as far as, in the tournament as it is. Mm-hmm. People are allowed to be murdered, but not everyone there is, down with that. So, Amy Johnston's highly talented. I recommend if people who haven't, checked out her work, look up her IMDb, see what she's in. Phenomenal actress slash stunt woman. People that actually know how to do their stuff. Not these people where stand off to the side, get paid billions of dollars from for a movie, and this not do the stunts. These people put their lives on the line so the pretty people can say a few lines. Ashley, not saying that Amy Johnston's not beautiful, dude. She should be a bigger star than what she is. Unfortunately, Hollywood is you got to know the right people and do the certain things for people or to get certain things. Get the roles. It's right. Ridiculous. Some people joke about the whole Me Too movement, but honestly, you look at the directors, what's going on over there. It's just basically been a thing that needs rechanged, reshaped as far as who gets what roles. It should be based on if it's roles. If you're gonna get a role for a movie, it should be based on your acting ability, not on your gender, not on who or who you're sleeping with. It's ridiculous. But Amy Johnston, dude, I do. If you've not checked her stuff, dude, I can't stress enough. This movie is a great movie. You get martial arts, quality martial arts too. It's for those who prefer to watch in English. It's spoken in English. I'm not sure. I don't know if Amy Johnston knows any other language than English. But I enjoyed this movie. It's basically of a girl basically who just from basically she was a nobody. She worked as a waitress. Didn't like people. Basically like hitting on her. And she decided, to follow her father's footsteps. Her father's been missing, so she finds out about this secret tournament, enters it, And meanwhile, she's doing this. Another person is also being trained by another person. And these two people that are training Amy Johnston and the other character, they are rivals.
It's like
So
a
for them,
proxy war using Amy Johnston and the other
yeah,
people
yeah,
in it too.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like the Karate Kid, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you Johnny versus Danny. I recommend, as I said, I strongly recommend this. If you've never checked this out, and if you're into martial arts, dude, check it out. I don't want to spoil it for you as much. You know, I want to keep this as spoiler-free as possible because you know I hate hearing about what a movie is before you get to see it. You know, so.
What I will say, because I'll agree with you, I had no idea who she was at all, and then I started to watch it, and then the early scene, the waitress scene, we'll call it, let's say, I went, oh wow, this scene was a good scene. I want to watch it for another martial arts scene to see how good that's done. And I will say that she's not the biggest person in the world, but she's legit martial artist. She grew up. It's in her genetics, literally. So I really appreciate, as we've talked about before with Chuck Norris or JCVD, those types of films from the 80s. Two things. One, we like, to your point, the stunts. We like somebody who physically knows how to do all that stuff and can perform it. There's a fluidity that cannot be mimicked with no amount of CGI or stand-ins or any of those things. It's really done well. And when you are allowed to let that go, it's nice as cinema magic to me, as opposed to the comic book films in general. And that's one reason why I like it. The other reason too is that it's you mentioned before the Me Too, this, that, or whatever. Amy Johnston's younger, obviously. We wonder now who these martial arts people are going to be coming up. We're going to talk about Scott Adkins here in a moment. But for me, one of the highlights of Kicking It that you and I have done for about 6 months now, which has been, like I say, one of our most popular channels, is not only have we covered some of these older 80s action stars, we've discovered, I think, at least from you being the younger of the two significantly, that as the millennium in a group, you kind of go, yeah, I kind of like how there's not necessarily a ton of martial arts in Chuck Norris, but just enough, and then it builds and it hits a highlight. And I think that in this movie here, as well as some other Amy Johnston movies, which we've seen a couple, we haven't reviewed any yet. You kind of get that in here too. It's got a nice old school 80s template to it, and for that I think it's a watch. So if you like 80s action films in general, you want to see a film in it who's legitimate, there's enough little twists and turns to that formula that make it kind of refreshing, and it seems like a fairly decent big budget movie the way it comes across, as opposed to say a smaller VOD type. So yeah, obviously, Lady Bloodfight's one of the first ones we're talking about. The second one I'm going to throw out, which I don't know if you've seen this one, Doctor, so we're kind of going back and forth a little bit with a variety.
Mm-hmm.
But I had saw, and this was actually the first time I believe I saw this particular person, and Scott Adkins, and it's called Savage Dog. And it's a movie in it where he's a guy, he ends up getting captured, and again, to your point, not saying too many spoilers about it. What I saw in Scott Adkins is I saw a guy that, one, is a very handsome fellow. He's like Jean-Claude in that sense. He's got an excellent physique. He looks the role. He looks legitimate. But like what we talked about with Amy Johnston is that he obviously has the skills and he has the moves, and he's one of those guys that I look at and it seems like he knows about 3 or 4 martial arts and everything, and it's like, we joke about Chuck Norris kind of dumbing down his moveset as he got older and in his films, and there was that one finishing move, the roundhouse kick, we like to say, and when you go, oh, I wish Amy Johnston had a roundhouse in her movies, or if that was a thing. I don't know if that gimmick would work, but it's something I think about. But Scott Adkins, it seems like he's so good and so talented, kind of like Amy, who can not just do martial arts but use weapons. I go, man, what can this guy not do? Is what I ask myself, because he's a bit of a flippity floppity guy, but like I say, with his physique and all that, I mean, he definitely takes a beating, and he churns these movies out a lot. I've seen several so far that have been on Netflix over the past few months, but this is the first one, so I wanted to mention that, and it also happens to be there too. So it's a savage introduction to him, I suppose, to make fun of the title. Have you seen this movie?
No, I have not.
Okay, I think it would. Compared to some of others films, I would say that it's a pretty standard fare. There is a movie out there which we'll talk about at some point, and I think we are going to try to combine both Amy and Scott in this, where she's kicking his ass. There's a real good clip of that too, so we may be reviewing that here soon. All right, so let me turn the table over to you next for another martial arts film that you saw on Netflix recently and why we should watch it.
This one's called Revenger. It's a South Korean martial arts movie. Came out 2018.
Does it have Korean Chuck Norris in it?
It does not have him in there.
Damn,
but it has Bruce Kahn. obviously, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a popular thing where everybody's names over their kid Bruce now these days. If you could join martial arts, but Bruce Khan, dude, this guy came out of nowhere. I forgot he's one of the bad guys in The Medallion with Jackie Chan. That's from 2003. He was also in the movie called Last Eve. This movie, he plays a cop that's basically sent to this prison island. And while he's on there, like, he comes across, he saves like this little kid, from these people, because there's on the island. There's a group of people who are basically like bad and ruthless and killers, and then there's a group of people who've basically been wronged by the government. They're maybe for petty theft because they're starving, so they grab and stole an apple or something, whatever. They're stuck on the island too now, and so there's a good and a bad tribe. Bruce Khan arrives on the island down there, and then he basically is. You find out he's basically there for revenge against the criminal base. I'm not gonna say why he wants him to kill him, but he has a pretty good reason. You'll find out when you
haven't seen the movie, so that's brand new. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about it. What's worth seeing?
Basically, the martial arts he does on this is just phenomenal. I admit I do not know the different types, as far as identifying them, but he's a one-man army on this thing. And the way when he beats a guy, you hear the punch, and you see the bone snap come out. You hear the crunch. You just feel it. It's like you feel bad for the people he's beating up, even though they're bad guys. It's like he's doing whatever he can. Just first he said at the beginning of the movie, he's just so on revenge. But then this little girl basically opens up his heart, so he starts helping the people, the villagers. And the villagers are like, well, first we don't want to take care of them, but he wins them over. But dude, the martial arts in this. This is as close you're gonna get to basically authentic, martial arts. I mean, people rage about Ip Man. I look at this Revenger with Bruce Khan. I'm like, this just blows it out of the water.
So would you say Ip Man? To me, Ip Man's very stylish, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But you're saying this is a bit more brutal.
This is more brutal. I mean, when he beats up the guy, it's not like ha ha ha. No, it's like no. Like you hear the snap, you see him actually like real
Snap,
time,
crackle, pop, yeah.
like. And it's not CG that far as I can tell. I mean, it must be props they're using or something, because when you see him, he's using whatever he can. Like it's a small little island. It must have been back in the day advantage, but they have all these little huts and stuff. So that it must have been some time in the war. Maybe it was used as a base, but you see him using tables, chairs, and breaking people on their backs and their arms, or putting their arms in there. It's just like wow. It's like if you love violence, this is your violencing without much of the gore, but it's just a way he And the thing is that they always are like they keep coming at him. Like you think like these guys are like, okay, he broke this guy's up, we're like, we'll take him at once, he's like, he's this one man. It's like no. So
right.
So yeah, I love the fact it's modern. I mean, he's 51 years old. So basically, when this movie came out, he's probably 49. Yeah. So, and I'd love to see him versus Ip Man.
And this is Revolver on Netflix.
No, Revenger.
Revenger. Okay, so Revenger on Netflix currently playing. Okay, nice. Yeah, I might check that out and queue it up because like I said, I haven't seen it. I think I might know who the person is you're talking about in it, so I think that's kind of cool. So, one movie that I've seen, which I thought you did, but I don't. When we started talking, I got the vibe now that you haven't. It's a reboot of Kickboxer, and we mentioned that's kind of the theme tonight, martial arts. But JCVD is one of our favorites, of course. We have our own separate JCVD channel on the Xtreme Movie Show on YouTube. But we talked about Amy Johnston and Bloodsport and just the 80s types movies. But this one is actually called Kickboxer Vengeance. And the way it's a reboot is it's like the old original 80s movie, except for some roles are different. And now JCVD is actually in the role of the mentor, teaching the young guy how to fight and everything else. So the one thing I will say about this movie that I liked about it is I think it treats the source material with respect. Obviously, JCVD being involved in it, you think that would happen. I don't know too much about what's gone on with rights and everything over the years and the writing of it and everything too. But one thing that's pretty neat about it is the training sessions. You got another guy who I don't know if this guy's popular or not. I don't recall seeing him in anything else, but he's definitely a very fit guy. And we go to the training sequences, and if we remember how kind of comedy wise some of them were. Not all of them, but in the original one, you have that in this film too. So there's a scene in here where JCVD especially, he's getting close to, he's like he's in his mid 50s, getting close to 60. So he's still a really fit, good looking guy. Obviously he's aged, but he's very believable, and his ego doesn't overtake the role of the movie, where he's not the standout person. But he has some great scenes where the guy he's training gets all pissed at him and they get in a fight, and you get to see JCVD do a few moves on the guy, to show him, hey, I still got it, and you're a hothead. There's a scene in there where he's having the kids throw coconuts at the guy, and he's supposed to like break them, but he's kind of like blocking them or dodging them. He's like, ow, or whatever, and the kids are laughing. And JC's like, no, 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 no. And he shows them, you see him doing his moves and breaking these coconuts with his elbows and stuff, and it's just pretty good. But also, what's good about this film too is it looks fantastic. It doesn't look cheap. And a highlight in it to me, I will say, is Tong Po's being played by Dave Bautista. And Bautista from the WWE. He was also in Spectre as a henchman in there, and who I thought he did a good role in both those films. But in this film here, what's that?
I was gonna say he plays Tong Po.
Yes. And so he's got, how Tong Po's got the ponytail, and he's got kind of the mohawk shaved side haircut. He's got something like that in here. Bautista does, and the whole glassing and all that's fine. And Bautista is a bodybuilder that got into wrestling. That I don't think he might have tried MMA or was going to something. His physique obviously has changed as he's gotten older. He's trimmed down a little bit, but he still looks fantastic in there. And he's in his 40s, and he looks like he's had some, at least, Muay Thai training, let's say, because when they go to the fight, with the glasses or the glass and the gloves and all that, it looks realistic, and he looks formidable. And I've always said sometimes you can be a great physical presence and not have to talk. And in a situation like Bautista being Tong Po in here, it works out well. So if you know the old movie, this is like the old movie. If you see this one first and you see the other one, you can compare them. But it's one of those things where I wasn't upset about, the fact that they rebooted or re-imaged it or whatever, because, again, JCVD was in it, but the surprising good performance by the other people and the way it's filmed makes this, I think, worth watching on Netflix, and that's, of course, Kickboxer Vengeance. Obviously, there's more Kickboxer films that have come since then, but this is one in particular, and I think you haven't seen it, so as far as it being a reboot, you may find it somewhat enjoyable.
I see that Gina Carano was in there, too. She played Marcia.
You know what? That is true. I forgot how much of a Gina Carano fan you are. That's absolutely right. So, like I say, it's got maybe some B-level type people in there, but like we've talked about before, sometimes you can have a film with a bunch of really solid players, and if they're all hitting their notes right, it's still pretty damn good. So this isn't, one of these cheapy kind of goofball type ones. It's decent enough, and it surprised me that it wasn't just meh. It was okay. And obviously, I really like the original one a lot, and I know you do too. So it may be worth watching if you're interested in it. But Bautista does not make it a negative in this film. He's actually, I think, a positive for it. Yeah. So Yamakasi 3, The Great Challenge. 3D Zach, one of the things that we've talked about doing is, we're doing Netflix right now, but we've talked about getting some off of Vudu, maybe some that might be free with ads on YouTube, but also say Prime, because I've got a list on ones of Prime that we're going to probably talk about at some point. So we constantly are reviewing martial arts films and just action films in general, Kicking It, but martial arts is a popular one that we like to do. So for our last film, Ashley, Doctor, let me turn it over to you, and let's see what you got. Give it to me.
The last movie I got for this is The Night Comes For Us. This is stars with Joel Talzum and Ikyo Yue. I probably pronounced it horribly, but it's Uis. Mm-hmm. He's also from that guy is the main guy from The Raid. If you don't remember, if you've never seen
I saw it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's also in the Wu Assassins right now.
We talked about that with the Wu Assassins review. Yep.
Yeah. This is a little bit longer movie, but basically it's the main guy is Joe. I'll just call him Joe. I'm not gonna pronounce the last name, but Joe is basically his character Ito he's a gangling enforcer, but then he ends up there on one of the seven, I guess the seven sons or guys or for the Trilad, one of their enforcers, and he comes across these people. They're trying to escape and stuff, and they kill the mother, but then they go to kill the daughter. There's a daughter there, so he ends up basically turning his back on the Triad because he reckons, well, he's not gonna kill a kid, kill a child. So and he kills all his men. So the Triad they are not happy about this, so what happens is the Triad basically sends out a hit order on him. He escapes, he goes to his friends, his childhood friends, they originally were a group of kids, growing up together. He's resting,
There's a contract to put the hit out.
Yeah, basically there's a hit on this man, so
okay.
He basically has to while he's healing up, they send dude, it's like an army of guys armed with hatchets and stuff. No one's really using guns. Everyone's just using axes and hatchets, which I thought was interesting, though.
Well, there's a thing to that because I think when we covered, well, this movie's Indonesian, and we've covered another Indonesian movie. I don't know if it was The Raid, and we had talked a little bit at the time of the martial arts style that is to that area predominantly that uses those types of weapons, and I think that's what you're saying here. I have not seen the film, so I don't know if that's true, but that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically like you do your Streets of Rage.
Okay.
If they turn this into a game, it's one man versus a bunch of people, and the guy from The Raid, the main guy, Iko, he basically is the bad guy in this. Even though he was one of the group of childhood friends, he rose up in the ranks of the Triad, and he's like, well, why didn't you just kill the girl, dude? Why, we had it made. We started off nothing, being poor. We're now rich now, and basically, powerful. So, so basically in order to keep the girl safe, basically he's protecting as much as he can. And so Joe basically has to go through and take out the whole entire Triad section, go after them. And the very ending battle is basically him versus Ego, and it's an awesome fight. So I mean, it's a little longer movie. So I mean, I think it's about 2.5 hours, or at least a little bit over 2. Or it says runtime minutes 121 minutes.
Yeah, 2 hours 1 minute. Yep.
Yeah. So from start to finish, dude, it's like it's just you really basically come down. You sympathize with these characters. You become attached to them as you're watching through. It's like it's good versus evil. What more do you want?
Well, you'd mentioned before on Revenger that you said that was pretty violent. Would you say this one's violent or,
this movie
more acrobatic?
This one's a lot more violent than The Raid.
Okay. Really?
The Raid was violent as it was. Yeah. So this, like I said, people are getting there, getting chopped with axes and stuff. It's just like people getting shot. There's just two hot Indonesian girls in here, basically like assassins. They're basically sent, by this group, top elites, and they're because Eco's his goons can't get the job done, so they send a group of these girls to come and they're ruthless too. There's a girl in here who plays undercover cop, Julie Estelle, I believe her name is. She basically comes and helps him out. Regardless, helps out Joe, and so basically so you're getting your money's worth if you bought this. I guess some people didn't like it because it's not spoken in English. It's English subtitles on Netflix.
Okay.
The language it's spoken is Indonesian and Mandarin Chinese and Cantonese. So if you speak one of those languages, you're gonna have no problem following along. The only thing the outside say is it's in subtitles. Sometimes you miss the action because you're too busy seeing what they're saying, But once it gets going, man, I couldn't believe how gory it was. There's not guys getting their eyes gouged on it, but it's just enough. Because hatchets do a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm looking at the. I was real curious because I remember talking about that martial arts style because that was one of the things that stood out to me, and that was one of the reasons why I had liked that movie. And then here, if I got to watch this, and we'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's pronounced Pencak Silat, I believe. And of course, there's different forms and stances and stuff. But we talked about how the Chuck Norris films, for example, have kind of basically their old school point contact karate style, whereas the JCVD, it's you know, the acrobatic, little bit leggy, kicky stuff. But then you get to Steven Seagal, which, you know, despite what people may say about his attitude, is legit in the real world with his particular style, whether you like that or not. And it was so cool
Yeah.
in the 80s how we had very deliberate different styles. One movie we're going to be talking about pretty soon as a goofy 80s movie, but it's martial arts, is called Gymkata, which, you know, mixes the ninja mastery with gymnastics. I can't even keep a straight
Yeah.
face, and it's a
Oh,
one-off with Kirk Thomas. But in here, what you're talking about makes me want to see it, not because it's no longer violent, which is cool, but the fact that it seems like it's
what's
practical effects and it uses something special to that area. And
yeah,
that's one of the neat things about martial arts is the physical
and
part to it.
I was gonna say just like the raid's filmed in a building. The fight scenes are in a building too. So they're going from the room, trying to make it to the stairs and all that stuff, trying to get out. The two girls in here that were supposed to be like the top lead assassins are played by Savita Decorte and Hannah Rashid. I think both are like Swedish or something, or they're basically they're European. And what's funny is they're like lesbian lovers. What's just hilarious
Ooh,
about
but
that?
they can kick ass, I bet, right?
Yeah, so, so you kind of get these kind of see that like so and if one of them doesn't kill you, the other one's more deadly than the other one. So it's like because it's funny because you see all these guys like the guys are like, oh, we're doing so good, and they come across these girls and like, oh, they're just girls. Nope. It's like
Let's do a quick
so.
recap of what we had before we call it a night and get ready for our top 10 Tuesday. So for the 5 films that we picked out tonight, as far as talking about martial arts movies currently on Netflix, you can go see. The first one that we had reviewed separately before is our introduction to Amy Johnston. That's Lady Bloodfight. The next one has Scott Adkins. This was the first movie I saw with him in there. It's called Savage Dog. The third one, I believe, is called Revolver, that you say is a bit of a brutal
No,
film and worth
no,
watching.
no, it's
Revenger.
Revenger.
Revenger. Revenger.
Revolver is something else.
Yeah, whatever. It's a bad album title. But Revenger, yes, brutal, nasty, which brought me to my Tong Po reimaging of Kickboxer Vengeance, and of course, film number 5 that we just discussed. And again, these are not in any particular order, best to worst. They're just 5 that we plucked out that we wanted to share with each other and share with everybody else that's currently on there because, frankly, there's so many that we just like to cover them every now and then and pick out 1 or 2 depending on how popular they are or what we're in a mood for. So that's why I'm glad you brought up this last one here, which whose name was The Night Comes for Us.
Yeah, The Night Comes for Us.
Yeah,
With
2-hour
Joe
movie, violent.
Taslim, have never really seen any other movies, so he's the main character. And then it was weird seeing the guy from the raid being the bad guy. So it's Iko Uwais.
Yeah, and it looks
Like I
like
said, I'm
3D
probably
Zach, who showed up
I'm probably
tonight.
butchering their names horribly, and I apologize if any of the actors are in this movie are listening.
Yeah, we're not.
So,
we're not trying to be goofy with that or anything. Yeah.
oh,
3D Zach obviously just subscribed. Thanks, Zach. You're close to being the 500th subscriber, which is what we're going to be talking about on Top 10 Tuesday here tonight. So appreciate that. If you got any comments, any suggestions, you got some favorites, leave them in the comments once we post the movie. I'll be putting tags in for these films in here so you guys can see it. How can people get a hold of you on Twitter, Real Dr. V?
Real Dr. Venkman, pretty much.
What about
That's
Instagram?
what I am. On Instagram, it's also it's Real Dr. Venkman. All
Gotcha.
one word.
All right. And of course, I'm Rob, Classic Rob, as we do sometimes on the E from I Love Comics is streaming. And you can find me at one word, Rob Media Network on there too. So guys, thanks for listening. We're going to sign off now. We're going to get ready for the Top 10 Tuesday. So Doctor, thank you for showing up. So thank you again for the 3rd time for listening. We're glad you're here. Have a good night, everybody.
Laters.